So, Heather, this week we're in a very weird time right now because, and one where I certainly don't recall something like this. I don't know that it's happened in my adult years. I mean, I guess maybe the first Reagan election, although I was probably too young to sort of be fully savvy about these things. But there seems to be a broad understanding that Donald Trump will not win this election. And I say broad, but it's not in all quarters. There's still a significant portion of the country, 40 some odd percent, that may believe that he will win. And we're starting to see the unskewing of the polls based upon, I've seen Trump surrogates argue that the polls are wrong because just look at how many Twitter followers Donald Trump has, or, how many people are showing up at some of his rallies. This is a very strange time, though, isn't it?
Well, it's very strange, and especially since, Trump is now in the process and has been building this for a while, a narrative to explain why he's not going to win, if in fact he doesn't, and that is because he's saying that the whole election has been rigged. And he's saying it quite explicitly, and he's saying it, he's kind of created an entire story around this that includes the media being biased toward Hillary Clinton, which I think would make Hillary Clinton laugh, and the idea that the polls themselves are rigged, that there is vast vote fraud going on around the country, particularly in cities that he names off on the stage. Cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, St. Louis, all of which happen to be African American,
right,
have large African American populations. So there's no mystery about what he's talking about there. And he is, pretty much saying that he's saying it day after day that the polls are actually phony and they're being rigged to favor Hillary Clinton, and that if he loses, it's he isn't really losing. In other words, and so and if you go, I've been seeing interviews the last few days with Trump voters at the rallies, and they all believe this. There's we know he's winning. Look around you. There's all these people. It's like you say, look at all his Twitter followers. How can he possibly be losing? So he is really feeding a narrative that this election is being stolen from him. And that fits very well with the whole overarching concept of Hillary Clinton being a criminal who belongs in jail. She, of course, being that sort of a criminal, would steal an election as well. And I think that most people assume that the vast majority of Trump voters will lick their wounds and eventually accept the fact that that the country just didn't agree with them. But you just don't know about some of these people, right? I mean, some of them are not really all that rational to begin with, and they seem to think that there's a revolution brewing and that they are going to have to take up arms, or at the very least resist in whatever way possible, and we just don't know where that's going to go. I mean, I wrote a piece, I did some research on Trump has been pimping this idea that there was going to be a lot of vote fraud, systemic vote fraud going on around the country. That's just in line with what Republicans say all the time.
Right.
And he had an organizing page on his website for people to go sign up, and then they would go become election poll watchers and observers and do it in the official way that people are allowed to do it. And they've interviewed a lot of, the news media has gone and interviewed a lot of the election officials to find out if there is this organization, and there doesn't appear to be. So much like the rest of his campaign, a lot of that's just, for
just
show.
Talk.
It isn't, yeah. But, it doesn't take, it only takes a couple of people with ill intent to cause some real problems.
And I should say that the Republican Party filed a lawsuit this week in an attempt to claim that the poll watcher law in Pennsylvania is unconstitutional because it does not allow people from outside the district to come in and look at the, basically intimidate voters. And so when you're talking about, Philadelphia or, other cities, particularly when we're talking about Pennsylvania, the idea that people are going to come in from some rural county to oversee the polling in a predominantly African American neighborhood gives you this sense of like, hey, this could be an opportunity for some intimidation and whatnot. I mean, it's fascinating to me because years ago I had traveled to Cuba to do a documentary with my wife, and I should say, full disclosure, that it was fully licensed by the Office of the Treasury Department. But one of the things that that Castro did is all the police force were from the rural areas, and they were brought in to be policemen in like for Havana, for instance. And that dynamic, which creates sort of a natural tension, right, is it sounds like what they're trying to build in Pennsylvania. But this is pretty disturbing stuff. And we got to take a break. But when we come back, Digby, I want you to talk about this Wayne LaPierre call, I guess I would call it, more than anything else, for Trump supporters, because, and then I want to discuss what has been noticeably absent from Trump's narrative, and I think we're going to see more of it, and that is a full-throated blaming of the Republican establishment, because earlier this week we got a very clear indication of where this is going for Donald Trump. And, I'll just give a hint. It's to TV. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Digby. Sam Seder, Ring of Fire Radio.